So this story is about 3 trees. One day, on a mountaintop, 3 trees were dreaming about what they wanted to be when they grew up. The first tree said, "I would like to be made into a treasure chest and hold the most precious jewels in the world." The second tree said, "I'd like to be made into a big, strong, mighty ship so I can carry kings and important people across the 7 seas." The third tree said, "I'd like to stay right here and grow big and tall so that when people would come and see me, they would look up high and see the heavens and remember God." Many days and nights and years passed, and all 3 trees grew up big, strong, and beautiful, till one day a woodcutter came, and the woodcutter chopped down the first tree. But instead of making it into a treasure chest, the woodcutter had other plans and made the tree into a feeding box and put it inside a cold, damp barn. The first tree was sad about that. This woodcutter went and chopped the second tree down and took it to a shipyard. But no mighty ships were built that day. Instead, the second tree was fashioned into a simple fishing boat, much to the second tree's disappointment. But it was the third tree that was most sad and confused of all of them. The woodcutter chopped the third tree down and made it into long beams of wood and just left it behind in a lumber yard, all alone for several years. Many days and nights passed again until one day a bright light shone down onto the barn where the first tree was. And the first tree saw a young mother, a refugee, place her newborn baby inside the feeding box, grateful that there was a warm place for her to place her baby. The first tree heard the heavens open up and the angels sing and call the baby Savior. The first tree also saw many important people come from faraway lands and give this baby gifts. It was then that the first tree realized that I might not be a treasure chest, but I get to keep the greatest treasure in the world safe and warm. Many days and nights passed, and the second tree felt that it was being led to the sea by a rabbi, a man and his friends. When he was out in the sea, a storm rose, and there were big waves that were wild and throwing the boat, thrashing it around the waves. And the boat was scared and the tree tried to keep its pieces together so that the passengers wouldn't fall out. But then the man stood up, put his hand up, and said, "Peace." And the wind and the waters calmed down. And the second tree thought, I might not be carrying a mighty king, but I get to work with someone so powerful that he can calm the chaos that's in these poor fishermen's life. One Friday morning, the third tree felt that someone was dragging her beams across the ground. She heard an angry mob yelling at the man that was carrying her. She saw people spit at him. And she heard stories about this man. She heard stories that he had fed the poor and healed the sick, that he had stood up for justice. That's right. And because of that, the rulers were angry, and they saw him as a threat, and so they captured him. And soldiers nailed his hands to her. And she felt ashamed that she was being used this way. The sky got dark, and the man died. But then 3 days passed. And on Sunday morning, the sun rose, and the ground shook with joy. The man who was called Jesus had risen, and he defeated death. Jesus' friends rejoiced and continued to share the love of God because they weren't afraid anymore, because he wasn't scared. They gave shelter to the unhoused and stood up for what's right, doing their part to bring peace here on earth. and so can you. All right, friends, what I'd like to hear from maybe two people. What are you going to do to spread the message of love this year? Or peace? Anyone have any idea? Yes.
Being kind.
That's right. That's really good.
Being kind and helping plants grow.
All right, friends, be encouraged, knowing that you do not have to be afraid because Jesus wasn't afraid either. Let's go back to our seats singing Siya Hamba.